And whistleblowers, again, I mean, you had this one whistleblower, but there are others that have come forward, aren't they? And
yes.
And it's the same with the FBI, the whistleblowers, and the IRS, and so on.
Which I'm very heartened by.
Yeah.
That as we are releasing the truth to the American people, that we have folks within these different organizations who have been silenced or who've experienced retaliation, who are finding some hope now and starting to come forward and bring their experience to help us in our mission of finding the truth and sharing the truth.
Yeah. And of all the 18 intelligence agencies that you have to look after, who's been the easiest and who's been the hardest, the worst?
Well, I mean, the CIA is a huge organization, and I'm not casting negative aspersions on everybody who works there. There are some great Americans who I've and am continuing to work with. But the CIA, again, when you look at John Brennan's CIA, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. A lot of work under James Comey's FBI that needs to be done there. When you look at the NSA as a powerful intelligence agency. So when you look at just by measure, these are the three big ones. And there's a lot of opportunity and necessity for change and reform so that they are fulfilling their core mission, our core mission within the intelligence community. When you look at the 18, a lot of the other elements are significantly smaller.
Yeah.
There's an intelligence element within the State Department and within the Department of Treasury, within obviously the Coast Guard and other elements within the military.
Space agency.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about your childhood and what sort of formed you. You said you were born in American Samoa and then moved to Hawaii as a young child. You were a great surfer. And your father...
I don't know about great, but I love surfing.
Well, anyone who can surf is great as far as I'm concerned, because I can't stand on a board. But so your father was a politician and he was a very socially conservative. So how did all of that mixture create the Tulsi Gabbard we see today?
We don't have enough time to go into the whole story, but my father and I ran for office actually the same year.
Oh, really?
Together
in the local.
He was running for a seat on the city council. I was running for a seat in the state legislature. My mom had actually been the first one in our family to kind of have a foray into politics.
Really?
She had run for Board of Education, and actually, this was, I think, 98 or 2000, I think. I think it was in 2000 that she had run. And, my parents are both teachers by trade. And, I was reflecting on this over the past couple of years, just as we've been seeing a lot of the issues with our own education system come to light around the context of, boys and girls sports. And as we saw recently, the Supreme Court ruled on parents having the right to say, no, I don't want my child reading these highly sexualized books within school, their public schools. These were some of the issues that my mom was actually bringing up when she was running for and elected to the Board of Education, because we were homeschooled. There's 5 kids in our family. We were homeschooled.
Wow.
And it was largely because my parents were concerned about what the public school system was teaching in some ways that were more that went far beyond, math and reading and science and history.
Social engineering.
Exactly. And so that it was just interesting. And I love my parents so much. They have set such a great example for me and for my siblings.
And you met your husband, Abe, who was also a surfer. Tell us about him. He's a photographer, and tell us also about his unusual proposal.
It's a very special one. We got to know each other. He's a cinematographer, and he and his friends volunteered on my first congressional campaign. And so we really became friends through that experience. The close bonds that were formed amongst this small team of of people from Hawaii seeking to make positive change. It was
traveling around. Yep.
It was an intense and very special experience for us all. But that's where we first started to really become friends. And then I think it was about a year after I had gotten elected, Abe asked me out, and so many of our dates that followed were out in the ocean. No surprise there. And so when he proposed to me about a year later, we usually surfed in the mornings. That day, we surfed in the afternoon around sunset, and he was very insistent that this happened. And we were driving to our favorite surf spot, and he was getting very irritated at all of the stoplights and the traffic. I was like, what is going on with you? But he was trying to time it perfectly for us to be out, paddled out to our spot as the sun was setting. And it happened as he had planned it. He pulled out this engagement ring that was attached to a flotation device that he created wrapped in gold duct tape, class it up a bit.
In case he dropped it.
He didn't want to lose that in the bottom of the ocean. Yeah. And asked me to marry him there as we were both leaning over our surfboards.
Oh, that's so cute.
With each other. It was very special and perfect way for us to start our lives together.
And then fast forward a little bit to your decision to run for president. That was a pretty audacious thing to do for a young woman, and I guess someone who didn't have that kind of apparatus that
certainly did not have the apparatus.
No. So what made you think that you could do it? Did you think you could win?
I felt that, again, when I looked at the candidates who were stepping forward to run, I did not have the confidence in them to be my commander-in-chief. Mm-hmm. And my parents had taught us from a young age, if you see a problem, don't complain about it. You step up and do something about it.
Right.
So I stepped up. And I thought then that, fully understand, many of the other people running for president do have a pretty big apparatus.
Yeah.
They have a lot of money and big donors and kind of all of the things that you think you would need in order to run for president and have a successful candidacy. I knew that I didn't have any of those things, but I really believe in the power of the people, and really felt from the outset, at least, I will have as fair a shot as any one of them standing on a debate stage to make my case directly to the American people. Let them decide. At least they'll have a different option to consider. Looking back, I fully underestimated the power of the media, really, quite frankly, and how, it was weaponized immediately. The very day that I had planned to announce my candidacy in Hawaii, there was an NBC story that came out. They weren't planning on publishing it until a week later because they'd asked, oh, well, what do we want to get your comment? And they told us they were going to publish it on a certain date. They published it as I was walking on that stage to make the announcement. And it was the beginnings of Tulsi Gabbard is a Russian asset. And where I found myself throughout the course of that campaign was kind of like me in the middle of an ocean in like a rubber dinghy boat up against an armada of naval warships, wildly outgunned and out-resourced, and really unable to have that fair platform, even on a debate stage. I think in most debates, I had a total of 6 minutes of time total to speak to the American people. And so learned some pretty important lessons about our democratic process, and how a lot of decisions were being made behind the curtains about who to feature in those debates, who to kind of silence and push off into the corners. And it was truly an eye-opening experience.
I want to ask you about the media, but first, just any impressions that you had during that campaign of Joe Biden, because I covered some of the Democratic primaries in Iowa and New Hampshire, and it was obvious to everybody that he was already on the cognitive decline path.
I had known him throughout my time in Congress. I had known his son, Bo, who was serving in the National Guard at the time as I was. And so Bo and I had kind of struck up a bit of a friendship around our shared service. And Joe Biden was always very kind to me in our different interactions that we had, both, official and out at different, social functions. And that kindness carried through that presidential campaign. What I saw during that campaign was very different from what we very quickly saw in his decline once he came into this job.
So he seemed okay at the time.
It was limited interaction, but based on what I saw, again, it was more in line with kind of the Uncle Joe vibe that I had at least always seen. And of course, what we saw play out ended up being something far more dark and sinister.
And what about Kamala Harris? Was there anything notable about her at the time?
I had not really ever had any interaction with her prior to that. She was quite cold to me. And something that I thought was interesting was that some of these big campaign events where all of the candidates were there, usually there was a group of each candidate's supporters. And I just remember this one in particular. And usually you end up seeing these people, the same people all the time. And there's a rapport there. There's a friendly rapport, even though you're running against each other and hey, we ran out of batteries. Do you have one? Yeah, sure. Here's a battery. Go ahead. But I remember distinctly as I was walking towards this event, and I had a bunch of my supporters with me, as we walked past Kamala Harris's group of supporters, they started screaming insults at us and booing. Wow. And it was I remember it because it really stood out as such a different energy and obviously a very different attitude towards us than we had as what became the norm as we were going to a lot of these events with a lot of the same people.
That's quite surprising because that's not really her persona,
Well, it depends on who you ask.
Right. Interesting. Now, the media. It's been striking that during all these declassifications, all these Russia hoax material that you've put out, pretty incontrovertible, that the very media that was involved in, getting leaks and propagating the Russia hoax is strangely silent now.
Exactly.
Are you surprised?
Not so strangely silent. I'm not surprised for a few reasons, primary of which many of these mainstream media outlets were the ones who James Brennan and his people John Brennan and his people and James Clapper and his people leaked to almost immediately after that Obama directed National Security Council meeting.
Before the intelligence community assessment had been made.
Weeks before that assessment was completed, and actually even before it had really begun being drafted. And so, and in many cases, these mainstream media outlets printed exactly what they were told to print without any kind of vetting or okay, well, was this always the assessment? Or can you give us any evidence that this is true? None of it, because it didn't exist. And then it wasn't just a one-off thing. These are mainstream media outlets that went on to repeat and build up and really advance and propagate this lie that was created by President Obama and his administration, and went on to win awards.
Pulitzer prizes, yes.
So when you look at, Ellen Nakashima from the Washington Post, for example, is one of those individuals who won a Pulitzer Prize. My first direct interaction with her was when I was going through the confirmation process for this job. And she and another Washington Post reporter went out to Hawaii and were stalking and harassing members of my family, former members of my congressional staff at their homes. My mother in particular was at her home and was about to walk in the front door and was shocked when she heard a voice behind her. There's a long pathway to the front door. This woman snuck up behind my mother and surprised her and said, well, I want to talk to you about your daughter. You're not returning my phone calls. And my mom said, it's because I'm not interested in talking to you. Please leave my property. So when you look at these kinds of people.
Interesting. The Russia Hoax writers were interested in trying to dig up dirt on you because I guess they
wanted to stop me. They wanted to block me from being able to fill the position that I'm in today.
And do you think they were put up to that by the Brennans, and who would have had more awareness of what a threat you were?
I think my own actions over the years have made very clear that I stand for the American people and that I will not hesitate to expose the truth and call out the deep state actors of Washington. So
you're a threat.
I don't know exactly what conversations were had, but the fact that many of these mainstream media outlets are mobilizing as like really, I can tell you my press person, she was working overtime, constantly getting calls from like, hey, we're hearing that Tulsi Gabbard did this or she said that. And she's like, it's 100% false. Once again, trying their very, very best to manufacture some concocted narrative in order to try to upend the president nominating me to serve in this position.
Amazing that you got through, and now that you're uncovering it all. It's just fantastic.
I pulled out my piece of paper here because we actually pulled up some numbers around the lack of mainstream media coverage on this. ABC, CBS, and NBC spent a total of 2,284 minutes covering this Russia hoax. They have devoted only 2 minutes and 17 seconds on the disclosures over these last couple of weeks. ABC's Good Morning America, CBS Morning, NBC's, their morning shows combined 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And when you look at their actual coverage, they're not saying, oh, interesting, look at these new facts that have come to light around what occurred in 2016 and 2017. No. Instead, they're giving airtime to
John Brennan,
and James Clapper and others.
Susan
Miller, who are not actually addressing what their own former employees are stating. Those who have said, no, we protested the use of the Steele dossier. We told John Brennan, these are senior CIA officials saying, we told John Brennan, this is false. This is discredited intelligence. You can't use this. And he overruled them. So, again, the mainstream media reaction to this, unfortunately, is quite predictable, because if they were to cover it honestly, they would have to admit their culpability in this egregious and historic wrong that has been committed against the American people and against our republic.
Lastly, 2 more questions. One is on President Trump. Is there anything about him that surprises you? One-on-one, what's he like?
I appreciate how really collaborative he is. When there's a bunch of us in the room or a few people in the room, he's frequently asking those who are in the room at any given time, hey, what do you think about this? And sometimes they agree with his position. Other times they say, well, no, actually, I think this is a different consideration. And he actually really listens. Another thing that really struck me about him when I was first campaigning for him in this past 2024 election, it was really the first time I really started to spend more time with him, was how no matter where we were, the first thing that he would do before a meeting would start, for example, he would come in and make sure that everyone was taken care of. He says, has anybody fed you? Has anybody brought you water? Do you want anything to drink? I was at, we had meetings at Bedminster at one point in time, and, he was going and checking on everything in Bedminster to make sure it was just the way it should be. He was looking at pictures and what should be hung where, and is it hung straight? And I was taking a phone call in one of the side rooms, and he poked his head and he's like, are you doing okay? You got everything you need? I was like, yes, Mr. President, I'm good.
He's very hospitable.
But he's and it's a genuine care Again, I've seen it and experienced it over and over again. Every time we're in the Oval Office briefing him on intelligence or on a certain issue, even in the Situation Room, when a very intense conversation is happening, hey, make sure everybody has something to drink. Do you guys want any snacks? Like his genuine care for others, no matter who you are, is incredible. And I think it's a side of him that most people don't get to see.
And the Situation Room, there were, during the bombing campaign of the Iranian nuclear facilities, there were stories being written about how you were on the outer, you weren't in the Situation Room.
I practically lived there alongside everyone else during that period of time. And again, President Trump's leadership, very precise leadership, is what led to the success of that operation.
Were you worried at all that
historic.
It was going to turn into World War III?
No. Our job is to be able to, play out, hey, here's different scenarios that we may have to consider. Here's what happens if this, here's what happens if that. But President Trump made very clear from the outset, he had a very specific objective, which unfortunately a lot of previous presidents don't know what their objective is, which is why we see these disastrous wars and regime change wars that turn into decades-long conflicts. He had a very specific objective, and he had executed a very specific and precise plan that successfully achieved that objective.
Mm-hmm. And a couple of quick questions. Sorry to keep you, but there's so much to ask you. UFOs. There's been a lot of...
My husband is in the corner, for the record, pumping his fist right now that you're asking this question.
So, is there anything... We've had some declassification of some very strange videos that look like they are, unidentified flying objects. Is there anything in the files that you think you could find or you have found?
Nothing that I'm prepared to talk about today.
So watch this space.
Say what?
Watch this space.
We are I'm just going to say this. We're continuing to look for the truth and share that truth with the American people.
The truth is out there.
Yes, it is.
So do you believe that there could be aliens?
I honestly, like, my personal belief. I have my own views and opinions.
Right.
In this role, I got to be careful with what I share.
Very interesting. and
I'm laughing. My husband's laughing in the corner because we have these same conversations, and obviously I don't share any classified information outside of my building with those who have clearances. But this is fun that he's here to watch this right now
because it's so interesting. I think it's one of those burning things that we grew up with.
Of course, there are a lot of questions. And there's a lot that's been put out there, and there's I'm still going through and looking through what do we know and what is it that we don't know. And
the New Jersey, the strange objects over New Jersey were drones.
I still have a lot of questions around that.
Yeah.
I've heard what the public official line is. I just personally still have a lot of questions that are unanswered.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't just New Jersey. It was happening in different parts of the country.